You're listening to Live Wild Radio, the part-time adventure podcast.
Join us as we explore how outdoor adventures build mind, body, and spirit.
So this episode's brought to you by our friends at Great Lakes Gear. You've heard us talk about them before. They're our favorite fitness companies. They ship to Canada. They ship to the U.S. If you happen to live like us in the Waterloo region, in just outside of Toronto, you can go pick it up and not pay any shipping. But these guys have kettlebells, barbells, squat racks, pull-up bars, gymnastics rings, maces, bumper plates, dumbbells, all of the stuff you need to get in fabulous shape with your killer home gym. Because yes, gyms might be open again, but as you've heard us talk over and over again about different workouts, being able to work out on your time, get in a 15-minute workout without having to leave the house, that can be life-changing. So even if you just pick yourself up a couple of kettlebells so you can do some swings and snatches and presses, some goblet squats and Turkish get-ups, all of our favorite exercises, if you go to greatlakesgear.com or us.greatlakesgear.com if you're our American friends, and at checkout, you use promo code LIVEWILD, you'll save 5%. And it helps because they give us a little bit. You don't pay any more. In fact, you save, and it helps. So head over to greatlakesgear.com and pick up any fitness equipment you need. Welcome back to Live Wild Radio, everyone. I'm Winston, here with my co-host, Catherine. And this is part 2 of our longevity episodes. It's going to turn into a series because there's so much to talk about. In the last episode, we talked a lot about fitness, strength, and how important that is to live a long, healthy life. Because it's one thing to live a long time, but if you're not mobile, you're not active, you're basically not in a position to enjoy having a long life. It's not that worth it either. So we want to have long life with high quality of life. And so today, we sort of brushed on it a little bit in the last episode, but we're going to get a little more in depth on why getting lighter and leaner will extend most people's lives, and then sort of branch off into a few other topics. And as we delve into this, what we found is that this is going to end up being a bunch of episodes.
Yeah, it is. It's something we're really passionate about and that we're living every day. And we have for the past couple of years, actually. We've really started to reflect and act on it. When it comes to weight loss in this particular episode, it's something that it's pretty close to me. I've lost 60 pounds in 5 years. And when you look at who I was, I couldn't hold my weight walking down the stairs. Terrible knees to who I am today. It's like night and day. And I can see not only in how I feel, how I can perform, how I can do things with such agility that I haven't done since I was a kid or like ever, like my first pull up the other day, but it's also shown up in my blood tests, how much my inflammation has decreased. I think Winston will probably pull out some of the markers because he seems to memorize them better than I do. But there's an obvious, for me, what was concerning with my longevity was probably around my joints and maybe one day going on disability, right? Yep. Because of having to do knee replacements, and knee replacements only last for like 10 years. And I was told I'd probably have to do it when I was like 50. So not good. So, and of course, often when you have a health issue, you kind of go in a downward spiral if you don't take care of it or you let it just take over you.
Mm-hmm. And this sort of comes back to, just to quickly touch on sort of the exercise, why it's so important. Because if you do, the fitter and stronger you are, the quicker you recover from injuries or surgeries.
That's true, right?
Like, so when you do need your knee replacement somewhere down the road, we're putting it off as far as possible with, fitness and training and losing weight.
Yeah.
But you're also running into the thing where by being fitter and stronger, when you do get it done, you will recover from it a lot quicker than somebody who was sedentary and out of shape when they got it done.
Yeah, I broke my elbow last year and had started mountain biking 2 months later after breaking my elbow. And when I had it checked out by my physiotherapist and she gave me my exercises, I think within 6 months, something like that, I had complete full use of it.
Yeah, full range of motion back.
But even use of it from a strength perspective, right? There's no question about that. And my physiotherapist, actually it was after 4 months. And I said, well, why do you think? She goes, you're in pretty good shape, Catherine. You know, you had a lot of strength. You had a lot of things going for you. So that was just an example of
because
how that turned around so quickly. Even when I was mountain biking, like after 2 months of breaking my elbow.
Because there is something called muscle memory. When you've been in shape once, your muscles, your cells actually remember it. Not in the sense of, having a memory in the brain sense, but once you've been in shape, it's way easier to get back in shape, right? And that's part of the reason why people who've been in really good shape recover quicker, because it's easier to get your fitness back than it is to build it the first time. So the younger you are when you build your fitness, because it's much easier to build fitness when you're young than it is when you're older.
Still possible.
It's still possible, but I'm just saying the best time to start is today, right? Whatever age that happens to be, because it's not going to get any easier tomorrow. So the earlier you develop that fitness, a very high level of fitness, whatever that is to you, and then an injury happens, a surgery, something like that, then the quicker you'll get it back afterwards, right? Whereas if you were never been in shape, then you get like an injury or a surgery, you're starting from like blank, right? And you're really starting below zero to get back, right? And that's why like a professional athlete might have to get a knee surgery, and then they're playing, in the big game the following season, right? Because they've been in such great shape.
Right.
Getting it back is much easier than building it the first time. Right.
Yeah.
And so, to take it around, because all of these things are interrelated, right? Lose weight, it's easier to be more active, right? Because it's easier on your joints. Then you run into the thing where there's all the internal parts that benefit not just from losing weight, but losing body fat. Because there's being overweight, and that could be either too much muscle or too much fat, which is hard on your cardiovascular system, right? Because if you get somebody like a super big jacked bodybuilder, right, they're going to be overweight. But it's not like their heart grew as much as their muscles did, right? So, obviously they have the plus that their bigger muscles were built by exercise. So obviously their cardiovascular system is going to have had more work than somebody who's the same weight, but it's fat rather than muscle. So they have that benefit, but it's still more tissue that your heart's got to pump blood to, right? It's got to work harder. And then you'll run into the thing if you're over fat, right? Overweight, but also over fat. Basically the way your body stores body fat is through insulin.
Before you go there, a quick question about over fat.
Yes.
What is the percentage of body fat that you want to target? And there's BMI, body mass index. Is that, in your opinion, of all that you've read, is that accurate?
Plus or minus for optimal health, right? If you look at body mass index and body fat percentage together, right? Okay. Not individually, but together.
Because some people have more muscle,
right?
Than the average person.
But if you look at them together, then they end up being a half decent, not perfect for every human being, because we're,
okay,
there is variation, but half decent indicator of health and longevity, right? So if somebody is in the healthy to the low end of overweight, the way the BMI scale works,
yeah,
and in women have a body fat percentage, around 20%,
yeah,
and men around 15. Women tend to carry a little more body fat for reproductive reasons than men do.
right,
Then if you're at that weight, at that body fat, then you'll tend to have a, all things being equal, a higher or better health outcomes.
So what is the body fat target, percentage-wise?
20% for women,
Okay.
and 15% for men.
Okay.
Now, obviously, you just to give you an idea, 15, you look pretty good. You look sort of pretty in shape
Yeah.
For a guy. 10%, you look like a super athlete.
Right.
Right.
Got it.
And so it'd be the same thing. Like women, you look pretty in shape. 15% for women would be looking like a super athlete, give or take, right? Like we're not talking on stage bodybuilder numbers or anything like that, but for like real healthy athlete-y type people.
Because I'm just trying to remember. I wish I had my phone on me right now, because through my Garmin scale, it tracks that. Do you remember what mine is?
About 30.
30. Okay.
Like your body fat percentage is in the 30 range.
Yeah. So I want to go down 10%.
Yep. Well, really 50%.
I guess. Yeah.
And sort of pull it circle to the insulin thing, right? So if people aren't aware, insulin's a hormone that your body puts out in response to the amount of blood sugar you have. And it regulates your blood sugar. And when blood sugar levels are above a certain point, then that insulin acts to regulate it, and it's got to put it somewhere. So essentially, you've got two main places it can go. And one, and this is the ideal one, is into your muscles because they're depleted, right? And this is why exercise is important, right? Because how you deplete them is with physical activity, lifting weights, going for a fairly hard bike ride. You've used muscle glycogen out of the muscles. And so the muscle cells are saying, hey, I could use a refill over here.
Right.
Right. But if you have, high blood sugar, therefore, an insulin response to that, you are going to run into the thing where then but the muscles are full, then it stores it as excess body fat, right? And this is one of the issues that people run into is, they're because people eat regularly, and a lot of people snack. And I was talking to a guy at work today, and he's like dropped 20 pounds because he just sort of consciously, he didn't realize until he started tracking it how much sugar he was eating per day.
Yeah.
Right? It's like he'd have like a few coffees and a few teas a day.
Yeah.
Right? And then that was like 6 or 8 spoonfuls of sugar. Just pure sugar. Then he'd like suck on Jolly Rancher candies.
Right.
Then he would this, and then he would that.
Yeah.
And then, bread in his sandwiches and all these different carbohydrates, but he wasn't doing anything to use it. Right? It's fuel. Like, when it comes to your body, if you just keep putting fuel in and you're not burning it, it's just storing. Right? If you, grab a handful at your belly, think of that, like think about how many granola bars or energy bars or little energy goo gels that is, right? You just happen to be carrying it with you all the time.
Yeah.
Right? But this is the thing you run into is you can't tap into fat as a fuel source when your insulin levels are up, right? Because you can't store and burn at the same time.
Right.
So, and what you run into is people end up gaining, body fat over time because they're out of balance. Because what you run into is they're getting insulin up regularly, and insulin is the storing hormone. And if you're storing, you want to also then have cycles of burning.
Right.
Like on a daily basis, right?
Yeah.
Store and burn, store and burn.
And the burn could be, obviously from your body just living, but, and whether it's just doing moderate walking, it sounds like there's something very valuable in just walking a lot.
Oh, there is.
Yeah. And in my case, like I'm targeting 10,000 steps a day. I think that's a good target for a lot of people, quite honestly, because that represents about a couple of hours of walking in a day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just spread, and even if it's just spread out.
Yeah.
Like unless it's like, doing a weighted walk like we do for, where you're targeting heart rates and all that kind of thing for exercise.
Yeah.
Just getting a lot of random steps in, like, movement snacks. We are meant to move, right? And I think that's one of the problems of modern life is we have an overabundance of highly palatable food, and most of the highly palatable food that's, easy access tends to be things that will trigger a lot of insulin response because there's a lot of carbohydrates in them.
Right.
And then we have like work, careers.
And then the need for convenience.
Yeah.
Amazon.
But we have careers that don't require movement.
Yeah.
Right? Like you work with your brain.
Yeah.
A lot of people, if you work in an office, you work in a, whatever it happens to be, you're not moving very much, right? And so you're sort of double whammying yourself. Is you're putting in a bunch of fuel, and then you're not burning it.
Right.
So if that's going to happen, you are just going to store it. And unless you're on anabolic steroids, your body does not store excess calories as muscle, right? It stores it as body fat.
Yeah.
And
so that insulin response too is also what causes diabetes, right?
Well,
we always hear about insulin levels and diabetes.
Yes. So there, essentially, there's diabetes type 1 that your body does not produce insulin, like your pancreas.
That's where you're just born with it.
Yes. And then there's type 2, which to me is almost a misnomer, right? Type 2 is a metabolic dysfunction, right? It was caused by lifestyle. Because what it is, it's generally too much food, too much body fat, not enough exercise, right? And that done over time, like a long period of time, ends up where your body just doesn't function properly. You end up with a condition called insulin resistance. Your body's producing insulin, but it doesn't use it properly. So then it just keeps producing more and more. And insulin, if it's elevated all the time, is also inflammatory, right? So then you end up with, just sort of more systemic inflammation throughout the whole body.
Right.
And so the fact is that most people, and this is just looking at all the medical literature, most people with the type 2 diabetes, when they lose a bunch of body fat and they exercise regularly, they're off medication.
That's like the cure for a lot of things. That was the two best things I could do for my knees, and I live
You
it.
exercised and lost weight.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah.
Like I can do a lot, and it's just, it really is phenomenal. And so, and obviously we'll talk about what are the two key ways of weight loss, and that's obviously diet and exercise. I truthfully feel that 80% of it's diet. That's the easiest way. But, but there also is such the thing as well. You talked about muscle memory. Mm-hmm. There's also something to do with weight memory that your body kind of sets into a groove. I don't know. We were talking about this earlier.
Yeah, it's something that they call set point theory.
Yeah.
That your body has a set point.
Yeah.
And that set point can be changed.
Right.
But, and what you don't want is for it to sort of default to a higher weight, right? Like we all know that person that can eat whatever they want and they don't gain weight.
Yeah.
Right? Their body has a low set point.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the fact is, if they do that for a long enough period of time, over the course of like years and decades, they are going to get fat too.
Right.
Right? Nobody gets a free lunch.
Maybe for the first little bit.
Yeah, and so the fact is that some people come into it more, we'll say, genetically gifted.
Yeah.
As far as staying at a lighter weight.
Yeah.
But eventually calories in, calories out, right? Like if you are consuming more calories than you burn, eventually you are going to accumulate excess body fat. Like that's just math, right?
Yeah.
Because one of the things you'll run into is those people that, quote unquote, can eat anything they want without gaining a lot of weight.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've worked with a number of them who wanted to gain weight, who wanted to put on muscle
mm-hmm.
and get bigger, and they just, and one of the things you'll run into is those types of people actually tend to be fidgeters. And when you actually analyze and like spend time with them mm-hmm. and analyze, they don't sit still. Right. So part of the reason why they have a hard time gaining weight is that they actually burn a ton of calories because, whether it's psychologically, that they don't sit still.
Yeah.
They're fidgety.
Yeah.
And movement uses energy.
It's interesting how over the past few months, actually, since I've made a conscious effort to walk a bit more, and I think it all started when I was taking care of the dogs, mm-hmm. to be quite honest with you. I just started to move more. Once you get in a bit of a habit, by force of habit, in that case it was the dogs, I actually feel like if I don't go for a walk, I don't feel good.
Yeah.
I didn't have that before. This is really new.
Yeah.
But it's become something like I need to move.
Mm-hmm.
I always knew it was good for me, and I had to. I was actually starting to I've lost a bit of sensitivity to vibration in my feet, my hands. A neurologist tested this. We're going to do an MRI on my back. But she thinks it might have been caused partly by working from home and just sitting in the same space.
Yeah, and you have a shitty chair with no padding on it, and your feet don't touch the ground. And you cross your legs, and you know, like there's a whole
thing there.
Yeah.
So I worked on my ergonomics, raised my, my monitor. I stand more often. My chair is probably still not the best. I'm still trying some new things. But anyway, moving more, I feel like is better. And so it's funny because in the past, I would try and lose weight. And I'm like, it's not working. I struggled. I was doing Weight Watchers. And I think what it comes down to is a lot of little things.
Yeah.
It truthfully, and if you just do all these little things, aside from eating, we'll talk. It's funny because the point of this was to talk about how weight loss is so important. There's different ways of looking at it, the way you can slice and dice it, but I know everybody wants to know the how. Actually, I'm going to pause right there for a second, and I want to continue on the whys because they're really important. Mm-hmm. And some of the other things that I didn't know about. Obviously, you can probably, this is obvious. The less weight you have, the more energy you'll have. You can move more.
Yeah. Because you're like the equivalent, you and I have talked about this a bunch. You have lost 2 full backpacks.
Yeah.
Worth of weight. So now when you put your backpack on and we go backpacking, it's like you don't even have a pack on. Mm-hmm. There's no way that's not going to be easier. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that overall, the lighter you are, it just puts you on a pathway to a healthy healthier lifestyle, everything you do, it gives you more confidence. Because you can move more, you're more apt to try new things, physical things that are activities, whether it be tennis or whatever it is.
Yeah. Like the reality is, it's like if you're, 250 pounds or 300 pounds or whatever number, you're probably not going to try rock climbing, like something that involves hanging from your fingertips.
Yeah.
Or, mountain biking where you got to ride your bike up ski hills.
It's hard.
Yeah. Like anything where you're overcoming gravity.
Yeah.
You are rewarded by being light and fast.
Yeah.
Like, look at the Navy SEALs, right? Or any of the special forces. It's not giant jacked guys. It's like relatively light. They look muscular, but they have a ton of endurance, right? It's being like having a high relative strength. It's the same thing with like, unless you get into like the heavyweights, look at any professional fighter. They're not giant jacked dudes with, obviously every sport has a few exceptions. There are genetic freaks out there. But it's one of those things, anything that requires you to move your body around, rewards you for not being excessively big, because you have to supply oxygen to all that tissue.
Yeah.
Right. Go ahead.
No, exactly. And I think when it comes down to it, how do you do it? How do you lose weight? And so we talked about this in the one episode of where I talked about how I lost weight. I think the number one thing, you talked about calories in, calories out, but real simple is high protein diet with vegetables, low carbs.
Yeah.
And quite honestly, I reduced my carbs. Like I just don't have any, like when I say carbs, I'm talking about simple carbs.
Yeah.
I don't have any of that. I have whole foods. I target wherever possible as much protein, basically a gram of protein for every pound that you weigh, which is a lot as far as I'm concerned. If you eat that and vegetables, you won't even be hungry to snack on anything else.
No, because protein and you stay full longer because protein, along with some healthy fats, takes longer to digest. Yeah, right. So you're full longer, and it doesn't oscillate your blood sugar.
Right.
So your energy feels more stable.
That particular diet that I just mentioned now, because you're reducing on the carbs, like to really zero, you might have some complex carbs, like a sweet potato. You might have some rice. I would probably stay away from the rice. But potatoes or carrots, peas, they all have carbs.
Yep.
Fruit, right? I'd stay away from juice. But I would say that in itself is going to significantly reduce your inflammation in your body. It will.
Because you're getting like a lot of, because you're, controlling blood sugar levels, you're then controlling insulin levels, and then inherently you're going to control a lot of inflammation. And basically like systemic inflammation throughout your whole body, for long periods of time ends up, and being over fat, all lead to things like increase your risk of cancer, diabetes, heart and stroke.
Oh, totally.
Like heart attacks, strokes,
yeah.
All of these different health problems dramatically improve when you're leaner, lighter, and fitter. And you eat, you're basically, your insulin responses through the day are more moderated. And so, it's not just a cosmetic thing of looking good in your underpants, although that's a nice byproduct.
Yeah.
All of these things we're talking about from a health standpoint, you just feel better. And if you feel better, then your family, like you have the energy to do stuff, right? Like your whole quality of life goes up.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's such low hanging fruit. We're not saying it's easy, right?
Yeah, and you don't have to do it 100% of the time, but if you can do it 80% of the time.
The 80-20 rule.
Yeah.
You know, a bastardized idea stolen from like economics.
Yeah.
But, you know, as long as you don't completely fuck it up the 20% of the time.
Yeah. So, you know, if you just, because here's the thing, if you go on a diet and it's something that you can't continue to do after the diet's over, you know, it's a bit problematic and you gain the weight back.
Yeah, because you figured it out, which is diets don't work.
I never did diet.
But Weight Watchers is a kind of...
I never did the calorie counting. What I did was the
points.
The core, I think is what it was, which was essentially eating whole foods.
You know.
And there was a point that if you want to have other stuff, you have some points left over. But they turned it to such a thing, and I don't know what it is today, but basically if you ate whole foods, you didn't have to count any points.
But did that work for you?
It did. What didn't work for me was, I don't know, like I did lose weight, but I couldn't get past it. And I think it was a combination. You see, when you start to exercise, it's like it's like a domino effect. For me, when I start to exercise, I drink more water.
Mm-hmm.
I drink more water, and then I'm exercising, and I lost my appetite after dinner. Like I don't really want to eat after it, so it suppresses my appetite.
Mm-hmm.
And then because you're working out, you're feeling good, you tend to clean up your eating anyway because of that. But you see how it's a domino effect. Plus, you're burning calories, and whatever strength training you've done has a burning effect for the next 24 hours.
Yeah, and it has and you build a little bit of muscle, and that muscle tissue is...
It's like compound interest.
Yeah, because muscle is biologically active tissue. It takes energy just sitting there, whereas body fat takes very little energy to maintain itself.
Mm-hmm.
Muscles, like... And this is the cool thing about strength training. You build some muscle and your metabolism goes up, right? So, and then it makes it easier to burn body fat.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, it's win-win. You feel better, you're stronger, you can do more stuff, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it makes it easier to burn body fat.
And I think the other thing that really pushed it to the next level was the keto diet. That is a diet.
It's just a
when I say it's a diet, the menu plan, when I follow it, that is a very specific diet. I don't always like it, like the things that I eat, but I know it works.
Yeah.
And within a week, you can lose like 12 pounds because you're dumping water from your body from all of the carbs that you might have had in your body, even though it might have been much. But it's always like it helps me get to the next level, that with a different exercise program. Like I did the 10,000 kettlebell swing challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was a year ago, I lost 22 pounds, right, in that year. And to me, I consider that to be a great success because I've kept it off, and I'm pretty much stuck at 170 right now, and which I haven't been since high school. But it really has, see, what does it for me is changing it up. You talked about resetting your, what did you call that?
Like your body weight set point. Yeah,
your set point. So I find in order for me to trigger that to decrease, I usually get back on the keto diet, right, for weeks, like maybe 3 or 4 weeks. I should see generally about a 10-pound loss in that. Or I do a new exercise program and, and I add different movements, like when I had done the 10,000 kettlebell swing challenge, I wasn't walking much, right? Mm-hmm. And now I have been. So I think when I started the keto diet again, I lost another 5 pounds. Like I only did it for like a week and a half, right? But I lost 5 pounds. And I think between that and all the walking I've been doing and consistently doing it, it's helped.
Yeah.
Right. So, I got to keep at it and just keep nudging away and drinking water and just clean up my eating, stop eating the Reese's Pieces buttercups that I love so much and peanut butter and banana. Yeah. That's my thing.
One of the things though that I have seen you've done, which is smart, is you sort of, we set up a phase, right? Mm-hmm. Training, there's something you're specifically working towards athletically. And then, because of that, the diet's a little tighter. You drop like 5, 10, whatever.
Yeah.
And you get sort of down to a new point, and then we kind of consolidate there for a month or two.
Yeah.
Right. And then it's like refocus again and then go to the next level.
Yeah.
Right. Rather than try to like stay
the course. Yeah.
Just nose to the grindstone. And this is for everybody figuring out what works for you.
Yeah.
Because it's that kind of thing of like doing it in steps, consolidate, stay here for a bit.
Yeah.
Right. And then, both the diet and training are kind of maintenance, if you want to think of it that way.
Yeah.
And then you kind of refocus and then go for it again.
Yeah. I think it's also resetting the motivation because there are times that I'll do the keto diet and I'm like, and then like when I say the diet, I mean like the menu plan.
Yeah.
Like I don't just eat keto foods. When I'm just eating keto foods, I don't consider that to be...
You're just eating a low carb diet.
I'm actually just eating a low carb diet because the keto menu means a lot of fat, and for me to naturally eat fatty foods and make those, unless I like the recipe, like I'm not gonna go eat the chocolate that they make you eat, like the bacon fat chocolate.
Yeah,
it's kind of gross in my opinion. Or the muffins, or or the bullet coffee shakes. I don't really like them. I just do it because I know it'll work.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
And when we should say too, one of the reasons that you, rather than just sort of like a whole food, lower carb diet, is there's a lot of evidence that ketogenic diets, which are, almost zero carbohydrate, are good for people who have inflammation problems. So that's one of the reasons why Catherine is doing it, not just, as far as a weight loss thing, but we're all the things we talked about with her knees, trying to minimize the amount of inflammation.
It's pretty significant.
Because if she has a bunch of carbs, her knees swell up.
Yeah, and I have noticed it even at this weight. I remember I think I said to him like, wow, my knees are really bugging me, or I'll eat carbs, especially when you've been eating a lot of protein, like just no carbs in your diet. When you do, you feel the sugar highs and lows.
Yeah.
You feel like shit,
Yeah.
Which is probably a good thing. Tells you, not to take them.
Yeah.
Although I do have them when we go biking, but I'm also using it up.
But you're burning it right away.
So I guess that's the reason why I don't feel the sugar high and low, because I am.
Well, and when you're exercising, the insulin response is muted. It's not as high because your it's just going right into the muscles.
So here's the thing. You only get to have the sugar, the candy, if you've earned it. Or, yeah.
Hey, if you want to put it that way.
Yeah, it's fair.
Although I don't think sugar's the best fuel when you're riding.
Sure seems like jet fuel when I'm hiking sometimes. Skittles.
Yeah, when it's a backpacking trip.
Yeah.
You're so in such a caloric deficit on those. Your body's happy to have anything. And one of the other tools, because we didn't even talk about this yet, because it's sort of a big topic, is because it is like half of your diet plan, or and when I say diet, it's not going on a diet, but like
how I eat,
how you eat is intermittent fasting.
Yeah, I'm glad that that's a perfect segue to what we want to talk about after, which is complete fasting. So intermittent fasting is when part of your day you fast, not for the entire. So intermittent fasting, in this case, we essentially shorten our window our eating window from basically noon to dinner. So lunch and dinner.
Yep.
And so after you've had dinner, you don't eat anything else until the next morning. You might have a coffee with no cream. You can put
sugar.
You can put stevia.
Yeah.
That's fun. And that's actually a good thing, by the way. That's actually a trick to burning more fat, is if you have that first thing in the morning, it releases your brown cells.
Brown fat cells, yeah.
Yeah. And then if you go for an aerobic exercise like walking, maybe have your heart rate, depending on your age, between 120, 130. I'm 46. Then you'll effectively lose that weight. It just activates all that for you. It's a nice little tip. But that's usually what I have for breakfast, and that's it. I don't eat until lunch. Mm-hmm. So you've essentially eliminated a whole meal from your diet and calories. So I've heard a lot of people where I work have had success with that, and they've lost a lot of weight, aside from other whatever else they do for nutrition.
Yeah. Well, because one of the most powerful things, though, is when you go to bed, right, or like after your last meal, and you've had the insulin from it, and it's gone back down. Well, then now you've given your body this big break, right? Like 16 hours till you eat again, and so it's such a simple way to basically blunt the amount of time throughout the day that you have insulin elevated. Mm-hmm. And so all that time that you're fasting, like, when you wake up in the morning, your body has gone, like overnight when you're sleeping, your body has gone into a fat burning mode, right?
So rather no food to pull from,
so rather than stuff food in your mouth in the morning, having a coffee and going for a walk, it just furthers that.
Yeah.
Right. And it's one of these things like this bullshit that we've heard our whole lives, like breakfast is the most important meal of the day. No, it's not. Like when you start experiencing like intermittent fasting, I find mental clarity comes from it. Mm-hmm. Like your brain works well. Mm-hmm. You're giving your whole digestive system a break. Like you're not cramming food in it all the time.
Well, that's the one thing I like very much about the keto diet is that when you look at the quantity of food that you're eating, overall, when you look at the quantity of food you're eating, because it has so much fat, you don't need a lot.
Yeah.
Therefore, you don't get that sleepy, tired, drunk effect.
And you don't feel bloated.
You don't feel bloated. That's immediate.
Yeah.
Within a week, a few days, you just do not have that pouch or pooch in your stomach.
Yeah. And then you don't have the mid-afternoon
coma.
Yeah. And this is not saying keto is like the only thing. It's just this is the way I like to explain it to people. Like it's really simple. There are essential fatty acids, right? That your body needs. Omega-3, 6 and 9s, DHE, EPA, look them up. There are essential amino acids that your body can't make. There are no essential carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are fuel. If you're not doing a lot, right? It's like putting gas in your car when it doesn't, during the pandemic, when it didn't leave your driveway. Eventually it's like every day you're taking a gas can, your car's full already, the gas tank's full, and you're just pouring gas on your car because, it's like, well, I'm giving it more fuel. Well, it doesn't need fuel, right?
It'd be cool if our watches actually had indicators as to how much, could measure the level of carbs in your body and determine whether or not you deserve to have more.
So actually your watch can't do it, but there's a thing you can get that actually analyzes your breath.
Oh, yeah?
And will tell you whether you're burning fat or carbs, and what you should be eating. Like,
Oh, what's that?
I forget what it's called, but I researched it, and it's actually got half decent, like, scientific evidence behind it. But that's one of the things. Like, if you're doing... Carbs are used for like high output things.
Yeah, we all eat too much though.
Yeah,
just right. Because it tastes good.
Yeah, and it's easy, and it's because it's the thing.
It stays. Its shelf life
is long.
Yeah.
Bread,
whatever.
It's bread and rice and potatoes and if you work on the farm and you're throwing hay bales all day, have at it, Hoss. You know what I mean?
You've earned it.
You need it.
Yeah,
right.
You do.
Like your gas tank.
Yeah.
Is being depleted regularly.
Yeah.
But the fact is, most of us don't do enough.
No, we eat for enjoyment, not for necessity.
Like we use like, and this is the thing for people to understand. Food is a drug, right? Because you take a drug to manipulate body processes, right? Well, when you eat, carbohydrates, you produce insulin. When you eat protein, you produce a hormone called glucagon. There's these different hormone responses from the foods we eat. Obviously, there's all the vitamins and minerals in food. Some foods are inflammatory. Some foods reduce inflammation. What you eat is, if you think of it that way, is like taking, a drug. Well, what do you want that drug to do? Right? As opposed to, quite honestly, most people or a lot of people, and this will be one of those topics we talk about living longer, will be stress reduction and stress management.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people use food as an antidepressant.
Yeah, for sure.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
And so if that is the case, and I've been guilty of this before.
Oh, yeah.
Like
I almost ate a dog biscuit today because I'm like, I need to eat something. I'm like, what? And I realized that was a dog biscuit. I'm not eeating that.
But it's the thing. Like we say, we refer to it as eating your feelings.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, totally. Nervous energy, whatever. You're just like,
Right. So, and I think that's one of the things you run into, the benefits that we have is we know that there is a antidepressant effect of exercise. I
was just going to mention that.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the fact that we exercise regularly
manages it.
Helps, and this is somebody myself who's suffered from, which like depression my whole life, which, probably comes from the concussions I've had, but, and exercise is one of the tools I use to manage depression. Mm-hmm. If I'm out of whack, I've also used food, right? Because you get that short-term dopamine hit. That highly palatable engineered food, like things that are, we're not talking the outside of the grocery store, right? We're not talking the produce and the meat.
We're talking about the Reese's Pieces Buttercups.
Yeah. That stuff is engineered.
I know.
Like think of it like,
they have Franken cups now.
Yeah. But
it's good.
Think about, like saying the quiet part out loud. What was Lay's catchphrase?
Bet you can't stop at one.
Yeah, I bet you can't eat just one.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you fucking engineered it that way, you bastards.
Yeah.
Right? Like they knew. They've done studies with this shit.
It's food science.
Right?
Yeah.
They've engineered it so you will overindulge.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, you just got to not buy that stuff. Here's the thing, like, and you got to watch how many times you do this, because I was on the keto menu plan, and then I took my daughter out for a dinner date yesterday, and I said, let's go out for dinner tonight. Like, am I not going to eat the rice? In the past, I haven't. I stuck to it. I'm like, no, I'm going to have it, and I'll go back on to tomorrow. Right? I just got to make sure I do that, because it is a slippery slope. It can be, and you got to watch that. So I guess overall, it's just being conscious of these things, realizing that exercise can be a great source of stress release for these other things that you might be dealing with, which is for somebody like myself who didn't always want to go for a walk or find it enjoyable. Thought it became enjoyable because I attached something different to it. Like I might put on a meditation podcast while I go for a hike, or put on a weighted vest. Now it's not just walking aimlessly. It's actually for a purpose. Do you know what I mean? No. Or take a dog for a walk. And then here's my coffee and my podcast at the same time. Really enjoyed that, and just go for a walk with my podcast and my coffee in the morning. It's a ritual. You start to attach these positive feelings to it, but you also get the other benefits. Mm-hmm. It's just relaxing. It's your you time, right? So, Yeah, I think for the weight loss and eating, the protein piece, what we talked about, and the vegetables, hands down works.
Yeah.
But I think when you combine that with exercise, we already know that works as well, building more muscle. You can just naturally burn more. But overall, I forget what I was going to say.
Well, that's okay. But back to the fasting thing.
Right. Now we're talking about, yes.
Yeah, because we were talking about the intermittent fasting. So there's a number of health benefits that come from not only the ease of like fat and weight loss from it.
What is fasting what's your definition of fasting?
Fasting is whenever you're not eating.
For how long? What's the minimum amount to consider fasting? Because there's intermittent fasting.
Yeah, but the fact is like they're all fasting. It's just the duration and therefore the effect you're going for.
Okay. So what duration are you talking about?
I'm talking about all of them, right? So okay. Intermittent. So essentially, because fasting is not eating, right? And that's why we refer to that first meal of the day as break fast, because you're breaking your fast that you had overnight. That's why they call it that. But essentially, if you move break fast to further in the day, there's health benefits that come from that. It eases, like you actually, your gastrointestinal tract just fucking gets a break. You're just not cramming shit down it all the time.
Yeah.
It wasn't meant to be, a garbage factory working 24/7, But then if you experiment with longer fasts, right? Because when you're fasting, obviously, like you wake up in the morning, right? You obviously fasted when you slept. If you extend that out, right? Obviously, every day we do, a 16-hour fast. If you even periodically extend that out to 24 hours, or even 36 hours, there's a process in the body called autophagy, right? And I talked about how insulin is a storage hormone, right? And if you're storing all the time, then you end up with like an A&E show about you. But the flip side is a process in your body called autophagy. And that translates, from the Greek to be self-eating. And so what autophagy is when your body burns off or breaks down junk proteins, junk cells, cleans the garbage out of your brain. Like, to give you a perfect example, let's say you've lost a lot of weight, so you have a bunch of loose skin. Regular periods of extended fast, like 36 hours, even go like a 48-hour water fast where all you drink is water and coffee for 48 hours to maximize autophagy. If you do that like regularly, because that loose skin is a bunch of extra collagen, a bunch of proteins, not going to say like it's going to look like it's painted on, but you will actually see a reduction in loose skin because your body eats off those junk proteins, but that balancing, right? We want to have like a nice balance between storing, like that insulin does, and basically house cleaning. And that's where like exercise stimulates autophagy, caffeine stimulates autophagy, fasting stimulates autophagy, right? Because when you're not eating, like in that period, that's when your body's doing the house cleaning. It's burning off because it's got to burn something, right? If you're not sticking it in, it's taking it from inside the house, right? It's house cleaning. But if people are never giving their body a break because it's always in the storage mode, it's never going to house clean, right? And there's some brilliant work. There's a doctor in Toronto who's done a lot of research and study with fasting. We'll put a link in the show notes. And, you know, it's one of these things where that getting the body in a lower insulin state, he finds, because he specializes in kidneys, right? But a lot of his patients are obese, because obviously when you have more mass, your kidneys also have to work harder, right? Like, you know, when we're too big, all the organs didn't get big enough to handle the amount of tissue we have, right? So the heart works harder, the kidneys work harder, the joints work harder, everything's getting the shit kicked out of it. You know, so one of the biggest things working with his patients is to decrease body fat, and whole foods and fasting. And he'll get people like, you know, like in severe cases doing, you know, like 48-hour fasts every 2 weeks, and intermittent fasting every day.
Which isn't hard, yeah.
No.
And once you start doing that, like there were a couple times that I almost did a 24-hour fast. I'm like, that wasn't hard.
No.
Yeah.
You know, like I wouldn't want to do one of our like 3-hour epic mountain bike rides in the middle of a 24-hour fast.
Yeah.
Right? Because you are burning a lot of carbohydrate, and
Right.
you can get depleted and bonk in those situations. But doing one of my half-hour weight training workouts in the middle of a fast, no problem. You got more than enough carbohydrate in your system for that. Lots of walks. You know, one of the simple things to do, like if you want to accelerate your fat loss, is intermittent fast every day. So do a 16-8, right? So you have an 8-hour eating window each day, but 3 days a week, 1 meal a day. If you're eating only 1 meal a day, it's almost impossible not to be in a caloric or deficit, right? And make sure it's healthy foods, you know?
Yeah.
Like whole foods, vegetables, and, you know, protein. But if you do that like 3 times a week and then you intermittent fast the rest of the time, once you sort of get into the rhythm of it, it's really not that hard. Like your body adapts pretty quickly to it. Your body turns into a fat burning machine, right? You become fat adapted. You know, and the big thing is just make sure you get enough electrolytes.
Yeah.
And it's such a powerful tool, like the power of fasting, because it's free. It actually frees up a bunch of time for you. And even, you know, as a mom, when you've got your kids, if you were to do like 1 meal a day, well, you get your kids up and get them off on their way, right? Because you know, every day you're doing your intermittent fasting anyway.
Sure does.
You know, lunch.
Yeah.
You just don't
I've
eat
had
it.
a lot of people say that. It's so much easier to get the day started.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you still can have the nice family dinner together, right? And so you didn't have to screw up anybody else's approach to life,
Right.
to execute your plan,
Yeah.
right? And it, you know, it has a number of health benefits, and that's sort of the power of some of these things, right? Because they're remarkably simple, and you know, if you can, you know, get some fasting in. And you know, even doing the thing of like, for if it's a big leap for somebody to just sort of go to intermittent fasting, right? We play the incremental game. So do it 2 days a week to start with, just the intermittent fasting.
Yeah. Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And then go to 3.
Yeah.
And before you know it, 7 days a week, you're not eating breakfast.
It's highly convenient.
You know, it's easy. And you'd be amazed, like, so many people are like, oh, like when I talk to people at work, you know, and they're like, oh, how should I do this? And, you know, it's like, everybody's always asking me fitness-y questions. And it's like, well, this is the easiest. Oh, but I couldn't do that. Like, I would never have any energy. It's like,
You'd be surprised.
You're asking me these questions because you're overweight. You have tons of energy. Your problem is you can't access it. Right? Well, guess what? Like, if you're fasting, you're accessing it. Your body will go, oh, I guess this is what we're doing now. And
well, I think it's just the way that they feel. They have that cloud over them. But a lot of it has to do also with sleep. But just if you don't move, like when people move and they exercise, you sleep better, right? Your body functions more efficiently, right? So it recovers better than probably just on the the shitty diet and lifestyle that you're leading.
yeah, because it really, we're talking some low-hanging fruit, which is a few times a week, lift some heavy stuff, resistance training. I don't care how you do it. We're like the resistance training guide that we made available for download with the last episode. You can check that out. Then intermittent fasting, eat whole foods, like maybe the fasting might be a new idea for some people, right? But a lot of these things aren't rocket science, right? Like you've heard them before, right? Part of it is you need to ask, it's like, what do I have that I want to be around for that will actually get you doing the things?
I have found in my experience that when you do it as just one step at a time, do the exercise, just do it. Don't even worry about doing it 5 days a week or whatever, or 3 days or 4. Just do one.
Yeah.
You always felt, wow, that was really good. I really like that. I slept well. Wow, And so you just commit to 1 day a week, and then next thing you know, you'll make room for 2. Do you know what I mean? Like you start to buy into it and you start to adopt it because of all the positive effects. It's the same thing with intermittent fast, the same thing with eating. You just plan. Planning's big for eating, what you're going to eat, knowing what you're going to have the next day, pulling out the meat out of the freezer or buying the food.
Well, here's one of the simple, and this everybody should know already, but I'm going to repeat it. Never go grocery shopping on an empty stomach. Right? And write out a list before you go.
Bet you can't stick to your list. That's a Frito-Lay one. Do you know how many times the kids are like, I thought you were just going in for one thing. Well, my list wasn't complete enough.
Yeah, because if you think so many of the things when it comes to longevity, right? And we're going to get in the weeds in other episodes.
Right.
But so many of them are move more, do a lot of easy movement. Walking is the easiest one, but a yoga class, ride your bike, whatever.
Variety, yeah.
But a lot of easy movement, a little bit of hard movement, and that can be, obviously strength training. We're big fans of our kettlebells and body weight movements, but do some hill sprints, some, whatever. Like some hard stuff, have somebody go to a parking lot, put your car in neutral and push the car around, We
haven't done that yet.
That can be a fun,
kids would have fun with that.
But things that are hard, we want a little bit of hard in there. Eat whole foods.
Lots of protein.
Give your body a break from food. Because think of how many people, with a pet, you feed your dog once a day, he's fine.
Yeah.
Like we were not meant to constantly be eating.
Yeah.
And when you look at a lot of the research models, both in rats and in humans, because obviously they do a lot of studies in rats as analogous to humans. As far as mammals go.
Because we look like rats.
But reducing calories and weight extends life.
So on that note.
It's a thing. Go do some push-ups and don't eat any candy.
As tomorrow's Halloween.
Well, it's a couple of days.
But nevertheless. Which is why I did not buy my Halloween candy to give out just yet. I will buy it the day of, and I'll put it all out there in a bowl.
Yeah.
If it's not gone.
Yeah, like, and it's funny because I've at work people have been offering me Halloween candy,
Yeah.
and it's like, oh, thanks, no. Like, we had a product knowledge, a rep from one of the companies came in today, and they had like Halloween candy. It's like, oh, thanks, somebody else can have mine, right? All it takes is a little bit of discipline,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's like, what do you want?
Yeah.
Same. Life is a simple thing. What do you want, and what are you willing to give up to get it?
You got it.
So
stay tuned. There'll be more. And I'm really looking forward to talking about the topic on sleep. I'm trying out some
sleep and supplements and saunas.
I want to do one on blood reports.
Oh, yeah. Nerd out.
We like to get a doctor on for that one. It's really interesting stuff.
The worst part is, like, no shot to any doctors who might be listening, but with a lot of like the blood stuff, like analyzing like the science nerd shit. Some of the ones I talk to don't really know. They look at the chart, like, and if something's in the range, it's like, you're good.
Yeah.
Right.
They don't take a step back and look at
the big
what
picture.
Else. And you're working out. You worked out intensely, Catherine, this week as you did your blood test. That was not.
Like if they look at the creatinine, like, because one of the things you run into is, like, if they look at the creatinine levels, which is sort of a marker for your kidney health.
Yeah.
If you exercised super hard the day before, it's going to look like you have kidney disease. Right? Because you've broken muscle down and your body flushes the stuff out.
Yeah.
Right? It's a transient little spike or if you even just take creatine, right? Which one of the things we will recommend down the road, will show up elevated levels, but you're perfectly fine.
Right.
Right. So how?
Oh, by the way, my doctor was really concerned about me being on the keto diet. So she wanted to run some tests, and I did a more exhaustive test because I had access to my benefits. So I did the full $550 blood work. Right. And it turned out that despite being on keto, my cholesterol
your HDL was really good. Your LDL was really good.
Is that cholesterol?
The high density lipoproteins and the low density.
Okay.
Low is bad. Low density is bad. High density is good.
Okay.
Like the low density ones are the ones that stick to your arteries and clog everything.
Yeah. Anyways, I had really good levels considering that I have a lot of fat in my diet.
Yeah, because
that she was worried about.
Yeah, and this is the thing, but this is exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Right? People equate high fat with cholesterol problems, where it's almost always high sugar diets that give you shitty cholesterol numbers. Right? So again, not that all carbohydrates are bad.
Yeah.
It's just in excess they are.
And then we've also noticed that my inflammation markers from a couple of years ago to now are significantly lower.
Yeah.
And that's just a result of my exercise and diet.
Yep.
Which is huge because in my case, it affected my knees.
Yeah.
And therefore my quality of life.
Yep.
And
even before you're old.
I know.
And
with that note, because I'm getting old, I'm getting sleepy as I'm getting older by the minute.
Yeah. So everybody remember, try to get out and move a little bit, like work hard.
Play dirty.
And, keep
Live
on
long
keeping
and
on.
prosper.
Yeah.